Several core hearings of the DP's presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung, including the one in the retrial of his election law violation case, have been postponed until after the June 3rd election. Meanwhile, the PPP's presidential candidate Moon-soo met with independent Han Duck-soo over a candidacy merger amid a feud. The final signing of a nuclear power plant contract between Korea and the Czech Republic is put on hold, following a Czech court issuing an injunction asked by a rival French firm just a day before the official signing event in Prague. Korea says it'll make sure the deal is concluded as planned. India has fired missiles into Pakistan amid their long-running border dispute, killing dozens of people. Fears grow over escalation between the two nuclear-armed nations. It's May 7th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. The High Court today decided to postpone the hearing of Democratic Party presidential hopeful Lee Jae-myung's election law violation case retrial until after the presidential election, which was seen as a major legal hurdle for him ahead of the election. Our correspondent Shin Ha-young reports. The first hearing for the retrial of Democratic Party presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung's election law violation case has been rescheduled from May 15th to June 18th after the 21st presidential election. The Seoul High Court announced on Wednesday that the postponement was to ensure the defendant has a fair opportunity to campaign and to avoid any controversy over the fairness of the trial. The court added that it has always conducted trials independently and fairly based on the Constitution and the law and will continue to do so. This comes after Lee's legal team submitted a request to the court on Wednesday morning to reschedule. The Supreme Court last week struck down a lower court's acquittal of Lee, sending the case back to the appeals court. The party, which has been urging the High Court to postpone the hearing, and Lee welcomed the court's announcement, calling it the right decision.
This is a critical time when the people are practically exercising their sovereignty. So it's extremely important to ensure nothing hinders that process. I believe the court made a rightful and necessary decision in line with the spirit of the Constitution.
The People Power Party, on the other hand, expressed regret over the decision, with floor leader Kwon Sung-dong saying the court gave in to pressure from Lee's side. The same day, the Seoul Central District Court also postponed Lee's trial related to a land development scandal, one of 5 cases he is currently facing. Hearings were originally scheduled for May, but the court rescheduled it for June 24th. At the Parliament, a DP proposed amendment to the Criminal Procedure Act has passed the National Assembly Legislation and Judiciary Committee, led by members of the DP, despite a boycott by the PPP members. The amendment aims to halt legal proceedings once the defendant is elected president. Meanwhile, Lee on Wednesday continued meeting voters across the country, this time visiting Jeollabuk-do and Chungcheongnam-do provinces. During a visit to Jeollabuk-do, he asked for support, saying that local governments issuing more vouchers and providing basic income where people receive regular, unconditional payments would help increase the rural population. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News. We now turn to the latest on the People Power Party presidential candidate Moon-soo and ex-Prime Minister and independent candidate Han Duck-soo on the conservative bloc. After suspending his campaign yesterday, Kim appeared in public for the first time earlier this evening to meet with Han to discuss a possible merger. We have our correspondent Kim Do-yeon for more on the line. Do-yeon, I hear the two wrapped up dinner just a few moments ago. Was there any progress?
Jongmyo, at 6 p.m., People Power Party candidate Moon-soo and independent candidate Han Duck-soo began a long-awaited one-on-one talk in Seoul, aiming to finalize a merger deal before the presidential candidate registration deadline this Sunday. The talk lasted just over an hour, but according to the two sides, nothing has been agreed. This comes as the merger was expected to happen quickly after Kim secured the PPP nomination, largely on a message of unifying the conservative bloc behind a single candidate. But tensions quickly surfaced, and the meeting only came 4 days after his nomination, with Kim suspending his campaign on Tuesday in protest of what he called the leadership's rushed merger push. While Kim campaigned for a swift merger with the former prime minister, he since argued that it should be managed directly by the candidates, not imposed by the party leadership. The leadership, frustrated with delays on Wednesday, opened a survey of registered PPP voters on the merger issue and issued a notice for a potential emergency convention, a move widely seen as signaling a possible replacement of Kim as the party's nominee. These actions deeply offended the candidate. Kim's camp has since requested legal intervention, arguing that efforts to sideline him violate party rules and democratic norms.
Now, Han, on the other hand, said he's not running unless a merger happens. Tell us more.
That's right, Jongmin. Before heading into this meeting, Han publicly announced that he's not going to register as a candidate unless there is a merger. Take a listen to what he said.
I have no intention of dragging this out until ballots are printed. A political tug-of-war might excite politicians, but it only frustrates the public. I won't take part in that.
Because of this announcement, while the recent polls show Han is more competitive against the Democratic Party's candidate Lee Jae-myung, time is on Kim's side. Han has repeatedly said that all merger methods can be decided by the party, and he has no suggestion or preferred way of choosing the final candidate. This could be seen as passing the ball into Kim's court, as Kim has called for the party to let him decide on how to merge. That's all for now. Jungmin.
All right, Toyeon, thanks for the updates. In other news, a Czech court has put a brake on the final signing of a nuclear power plant project between that country and Korea, adopting an injunction asked by a rival French firm just a day before the official signing. The Czech utility company says it'll appeal the court ruling. Our correspondent Moon-soo has the details.
The final signing of a multi-billion-dollar nuclear power plant contract between South Korea's Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power and the Czech utility company CZ has been put on hold. On Tuesday, a Czech court issued an injunction as a result of France's EDF, a losing bidder, filing a complaint. The court said signing before EDF's lawsuit is resolved could irreparably harm its chances if the court later rules in its favor. Although the Czech competition regulator had previously dismissed EDF's complaints, the legal challenge forced the cancellation of Wednesday's planned signing ceremony. In response to this turn of events, the Czech authorities said the bidding was fair and that they would still see no problem with the final deal with KHNP. During a press briefing the following day, CZ announced that it will appeal this court ruling and proceed with the project regardless. It also plans to seek compensation for damages caused by the delay. As for Seoul's delegation in Prague, South Korea's Trade Minister Han Duck-soo said at a press briefing on Tuesday that the government will do everything possible to ensure that the agreement is concluded promptly and smoothly.
We are facing an unexpected delay, but there is no reason to doubt the transparency, fairness, or objectivity of the process.
That being said, he also said that it is yet unclear whether the delay will last for weeks or several months. KHNP President Hwang Jo expressed disappointment and criticized what he described as protectionist behavior by established nuclear players in Europe. Deputy Prime Minister and Acting President Lee Jae-myung further addressed the matter in a separate briefing in Seoul, stating that the South Korean government will stay in close contact with Czech authorities to enable a swift contract signing. Bilateral cooperation activities in Prague will proceed as previously planned, with both countries due to sign 12 memoranda of understanding in infrastructure and high-tech industries. Moon-soo, Arirang News.
The South Korean currency gained ground against the US dollar on this Wednesday, trading at 1,379 won in the early hours of its session today. This marks the once strongest level against the greenback in 6 months and comes in light of expectations surrounding the planned tariff talks between the U.S. and China. Also, Asian currencies rallied as investors continued to withdraw money from the U.S. amid concerns of a possible recession. in what many observers are calling a dramatic escalation in tensions. Two nuclear neighbors, India and Pakistan, have traded fierce fire over last month's deadly terrorist attack in the Indian-controlled part of Kashmir. Lee Jae-myung reports.
In the early hours of Wednesday, the Indian military launched a strike inside Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Pakistani officials report at least 30 civilian deaths, including children, and over 4 dozen injured. Coined Operation Sindoor, the strike targeted what India called terrorist infrastructure, with the Indian government stressing that no Pakistani military facilities were targeted. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif called the attack cowardly, and the Pakistani army spokesperson promised a strong response as well.
This cowardly, unjustified act of the enemy will be responded to strongly by the Pakistan Army, responding with the support of the Pakistani nation.
Pakistan claims several Indian fighter jets were shot down in retaliation. India, meanwhile, reports at least 7 civilians were killed by Pakistani shelling across the de facto border that divides Kashmir between the two countries. The escalating military exchange follows weeks of rising hostility, notably the April 22nd terrorist attack in Indian-administered Kashmir that killed dozens, in which Pakistan has denied involvement. With both countries on high alert, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has urged the two nuclear powers to exercise restraint.
It is also essential, especially at this critical hour, to avoid a military confrontation that could easily spin out of control. Now is the time for maximum restraint and stepping back from the brink.
U.S. President Donald Trump called the operation a shame, while neighboring China expressed regret over India's actions and urged both sides to avoid further escalation. Lee, Arirang News.
North Korea's Kim Jong-un will not be attending Russia's Victory Day celebration this week, but Chinese President Xi Jinping is scheduled to do so. Our correspondent Kim Jong-sil covers the implications of this reality.
In the heart of Moscow, Russia is preparing for a highly symbolic Victory Day, marking 80 years since the end of World War II. But this year's event is unfolding under a different kind of pressure, the ongoing war in Ukraine. The commemorations run from May 8th to 11th, with the annual military parade set for Friday in Red Square. 29 world leaders are expected, and military units from 13 countries, including China, will join Russian troops in the parade. But one leader who won't be attending is North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Pyongyang is expected to send its ambassador in Moscow, Shin Hong-chul, in his place. Though the North has confirmed support for Russian forces against Ukraine, its troops will not join the parade.
There was simply no realistic way for Kim to get there. North Korea has no aircraft for the trip, and going by train would take several days.
Another possible factor may involve Chinese President Xi Jinping, who is now confirmed to attend.
Given that President Xi Jinping is the most prominent guest at this year's event, it's possible that Kim Jong-un chose to stay away to avoid being overshadowed.
Professor Im added that Kim's absence may also reflect lingering tensions in North Korea's relationship with China. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping is stepping into the spotlight. His visit will include a summit with President Putin, expected to reaffirm the two countries' growing strategic partnership.
I'd like to highlight that Russia and China's comprehensive partnership and strategic interaction are now at the highest level in history.
Analysts say the summit is expected to focus on long-term economic ties and strategic coordination as both countries face growing pressure from the West. As China draws closer and North Korea pulls back, this year's Victory Day underscores a shifting power dynamic in Northeast Asia, less about history and more about strategy. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
The Papal Conclave to choose the next pope begins on Wednesday at the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. 133 cardinals from 70 countries, the largest and most diverse gathering in history, will vote under strict secrecy. To be elected, a candidate must secure at least 89 votes, a two-thirds majority. The result of each vote will be revealed through smoke rising from the chapel's chimney. White for a new pope, black for no result. Pope Francis was elected in 2 days back in 2013. In other news, the most devastating wildfire in the country more than a month ago has left a deep scar in the southeast, still recovering from the severe damage. But hope is there. It's for this reason that a group of volunteer tourists are visiting the regions. Our Park Go-nu has their story.
Weeks have passed since the worst wildfire in South Korea's history mainly scorched Gyeongsangbuk-do province in the southeast part of the country in March. Over 99,000 hectares of land, roughly the size of 140,000 football fields, were affected. In hard-hit regions like Andong, signs of the disaster still remain, from charred trees on once-dense forest slopes to ruined homes, warehouses, and damaged cultural heritage sites. And with recovery still underway, tourist numbers have declined. But recently, change has been made thanks to volunteer tourists, visitors who come not just to travel, but to help. Wearing gloves and masks and fueled by sincerity, they're clearing away burnt tree branches and gently cleaning cultural treasures using camellia oil amid thick dust.
I was scared when the wildfire happened, though my school wasn't very close. I can only imagine how terrifying it must have been for people living nearby. That's why I came believing that small acts like ours can lead to big changes.
Burnt tree branches like this are scattered everywhere. Just clearing one away helps bring life back to this region. And especially in a place that's full of cultural heritage, such as Andong, you get to realize how much we almost lost. And that's why every small effort here truly matters. And the residents have taken notice.
The wildfire happened overnight. Everything just burned down, so it means a lot seeing these young people come all the way to this rural area to help us.
After lending a hand, participants also get a chance to explore the area's beauty and history.
I'd never had the chance to visit neat places like Manhujong Pavilion before. Knowing it almost burned down made the visit even more meaningful.
To boost recovery, the government is also rolling out campaigns to encourage more visitors, offering travel discounts and support, along with more volunteer tours and programs. And with the help of these visitors, efforts are raising hopes to bring vitality back to fire-stricken regions. Park Go-nu, Arirang News, Andong.
On the first Sunday of every May, an ancient ritual takes place at the Jongmyo Shrine here in Seoul in memory of the deceased monarchs of the Joseon dynasty. Our Lee Jae-myung was there.
The king, carried in a royal palanquin, travels from the palace to Jongmyo Shrine. He's escorted by rows of officials and royal guards. When they reach the shrine, this impressive scene marks the beginning of a special reenactment, the Jongmyo Daeje, a grand royal ancestral ritual from the Joseon dynasty. So the Jongmyo Daeje, it's a ceremony that honors the kings and queens of the Joseon dynasty, and it's an ordinary event. Recognized by UNESCO, it's a rare chance to see centuries-old royal traditions come to life. The ceremony begins with placing the ancestral tablets, or shinju, of past kings and queens on the altar, followed by rites to greet and honor the spirits. With offerings of liquor, deep bows, and traditional music and dance, the ritual unfolds in solemn and precise tradition. This intangible cultural heritage was the Joseon dynasty's grandest and most significant state ritual conducted by the king. It was first revived in 1969 and is still held on the first Sunday of May and again in November. Originally built in the late 14th century, Jongmyo Shrine is recognized by UNESCO as the oldest and most well-preserved Confucian royal ancestral shrine. This year, for the first time in 6 years, the ritual at the main hall, Jeongjeon, was open to the public following 5 years of restoration work. In April, a Hwananje ceremony was held to mark the return of the ancestral tablets of the Joseon kings and queens to their original place in the main hall.
Since Jongmyo Daeje is a meaningful event held at a cultural heritage site, I wanted to wear a hanbok and chose a traditional one.
I left at 4 a.m. to attend this event today. I was happy to hear all the traditional music I was hoping for. It was a really special experience.
This was my first time seeing the Jongmyo Daeje, and even though I didn't know much about it, it made me want to learn more about traditional culture.
We took the chance and came to this palace to see what was going on and what it looks like, and it's very interesting, I have to say.
The timeless rituals of the 2-hour ceremony not only honor Korea's royal heritage, but also preserve a profound cultural legacy that still captivates and inspires today. 이은희, Arirang News.
Returning back to the daily life after the long holiday, some perfect clear spring weather appeared today. The temperature in Seoul rose to 20 degrees Celsius today, widening the daily temperature difference. You need to take good care of your health throughout this week amid these temperature swings. Even hotter early summer-like heat will appear with the daytime temperature rising to 25 degrees in Seoul tomorrow. UV rays will also stay high in the morning and they'll be very high in the afternoon. Please wear sunscreen before going outside. Tomorrow morning will be very similar to today with Seoul at 10 degrees, Busan at 12 degrees. Highs will move up to at least 20 degrees across the country. On Friday, it will start to rain from the south coast and Jeju Island at dawn and spread across the country in the morning. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. And that is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.